Let's jump into these questions. So the first one I had, I'm going to try to do about 3 minutes each for these questions. First one is, why don't some people connect with worship? You know, it's funny, but I can actually connect with that question, if that makes sense. Because I was one of those people who never really used to connect with worship. I came to the Lord in the mid-80s. And if I'm honest, I look back at probably the first few years of my Christian life, and I never really had an awareness of God's presence. To be honest, I was probably in a circle where we sang songs about God more than to God or with God. And that the idea, the concept of God's presence wasn't really part of my thinking in a way, and something that was taught or modeled. And I think there are reasons people don't connect with God. I think also, I know for me, I'm quite I don't want to say for some people this might sound prideful. I don't mean it that way. I'm quite an intellectual person. I'm a thinker. I'm an examiner. I'm a teacher. I'm a preacher. I'm a practical guy. I'm a pragmatist. And there's a part of that that's really useful. Like, I can teach your every view on the book of Revelation and unpack things and tell you about healing and how this thing fits with this thing. That's good. But there's a part, I would say, of worship where we actually need to become like a little child. And sometimes I think especially men, can struggle a little bit more with that, where it's like you need to step out of, I'm in control here, and become like this little child and learn to worship and learn to relax. And also learn that it's less about what you do, you need to do this and do that, and actually let God do, and learn to have that interactive relationship with the Holy Spirit. I think what many of us do as well is we step into a place where I think to feel God's presence is often at the beginning subjective. I know for me, about the year 2000, I began fasting. God told me to fast. And after about 5 days, it's like I really broke through to a place where I remember sitting in a room and I'm surrounded by God's presence. And I can quite literally feel God's presence, and I'm experiencing God's presence and enjoying God's presence. But I actually suddenly had to realize I had a lot of unbelief. Before that time, I would begin to feel God's presence. But in effect, I'd go, I'm just imagining that, or that's not real, that's just a coffee buzz or whatever. And I had to learn to realize God will come gently. He'll come like a dove. And the more we connect our affections with Him, the more that consciousness of His presence will grow. And I fully admit there's a subjectivity in experiencing God, but yet it's real. Everything, just because something's subjective doesn't mean there isn't an objectivity and a real place in that. So I would encourage you, if that's you, go on a journey of experiencing God. Maybe here's a couple of things that could help you. Read a few Psalms every day. Relax. Stop trying to experience angels and lightning bolts, and just begin to say, Lord, I love you. I love you. And listen and calm your heart, and you'll begin to develop that relationship which will draw you into worship. I believe we can learn to come into worship quickly and effectively in a powerful way, but it is something we've got to practice.